Welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat podcast, your one-stop shop for daily Miami Heat content. My name is Amir. For today's episode, I want to talk about Bill Simmons. He had 6 different topics and takeaways that he wanted to talk about on his podcast. I think the episode was released yesterday, and he brought up the Miami Heat again, and he mentioned that whenever he talks about the Miami Heat, that the Miami Heat fans usually get upset, and that's typically true because we don't like Bill Simmons because he's a Boston fan, and he had some not great things to say about the Miami Heat, and I don't think he's completely wrong, but I don't agree with everything that he's saying. So let's unpack that conversation. So he said the first thing, he posed the question, since the Miami Heat missed out on Dame, has Miami Heat culture died? He said he thinks it has, which I think that's completely untrue. He basically said the last smart thing that the Miami Heat have done is last season drafting Jaime Jaquez Jr., which is great. They actually did draft Jaime at the 18th spot. The Los Angeles Lakers thankfully did not choose Jaime Jaquez, who is from Los Angeles, who went to UCLA. So they made that mistake. But he brought up the fact that that's the last good thing the Miami Heat has done. Their season last year was terrible, which obviously we know. The Miami Heat lost 4-1 in the first round against the Celtics because Jimmy was out and Terry Rozier was out and Duncan was hurt. So it happens, but those are the facts. Those are our excuses. And we didn't have our best player. So, yes, we ultimately didn't have a great season and we were in the play-in again and lost in the first round. He talked about the offseason, how Pat Riley was mad at Jimmy Butler for his availability. And he talked about the Terry Rozier trade, which he thought was a good trade for the Miami Heat on paper. He said he liked Terry Rozier, thought he was doing really good for the Hornets. But since he's been on this Miami Heat team, hasn't really done anything. He said there's times out there that it reminds him of Tobias Harris, where you're like, is Tobias Harris actually playing? Is he on the court? And he said he feels the same way about Terry Rozier this year so far. So he said that trade is now just blah, hasn't worked. Talked about Bam Adebayo and said that he thinks he's going backwards as of right now. So I'm glad he said that. He said that he thinks Bam will turn it around, but right now he doesn't look like a top 15 player. And that's true. He looks like a top 35 player at this point. Defensively, he looks amazing still, but offensively, he's had too many bad games. He needs to pick it back up, which I think he will. And so I agree with him on that. And I also agree with him on the Terry piece right now because Terry's had a horrible 7-game stretch. He says he's been injured. He missed the last game with stress from his foot injury, and he should be playing on Sunday against the Mavericks. But either way, no excuses. His field goal percentages have been way down. His shooting has been down. His assists have been down. So he hasn't been the same. And that's not a good thing. So I agree with him on that piece. And he also mentioned that the Miami Heat's new shiny toy and great asset, Nikola Jovic, has not been great. And he's just blah. And that's kind of fair. I mean, he hasn't really been good in the starting lineup. That's not his fault. He was placed in there as a placeholder. Doesn't fit with that starting lineup. He's just standing around, not leveraging his asset, his skill set. He's a better transition basketball player. He needs the ball in his hands. He's not just a stand up and spot up 3-point shooter. And that's what he was on the offensive or the starting rotation on offense. But off the bench, he's had some really good games after also getting his nose broken. So I don't fully agree with him on that statement. But I mean, again, Jovic hasn't been amazing or had this leap yet. But again, he's only 21 years old, so that's fine. He also mentioned the Heater playing really well in terms of Tyler Hero. He's averaging 24 points per game and shooting really ridiculous numbers from three, like 46%, and still not winning. It's not equating to wins. And then he mentioned that the Miami Heat drafted Khalil Ware, who's not even in the rotation, and have missed out and passed on players like McCain and Dalton Connect, who both are playing really well in the last 5 or 6 games. McCain has been really good because there's been a lot of injuries, but he looks like he's still going to be in that rotation all year, even when players come back. Maxey came back. He's still got some playing time. Dalton Connect is getting more time. I think he just started recently for the Lakers, even though they lost to the Magic by 1, but he also looked really good, shooting 46% from 3 as a rookie. That's crazy. So he thinks that is a sign of the chinks in the armor, I guess, for the Miami Heat and another mistake that they've made. And he said he's finally not scared of them. And he should be still because this Boston Celtics team still, this with his Jimmy Butler build, has still only beat the Miami Heat one time in this playoff run. So they're 2-1, I believe. The Miami Heat are 3-1 against the Boston Celtics in the playoffs. in this Jimmy Butler build. And so the only time they lost, or no, excuse me, they're 3-2 now. Sorry, but Jimmy Butler, while playing, is 3-1 against them. They only beat the Miami Heat last year because Jimmy Butler. That's not the only reason. I'm sorry. The Boston Celtics were the best team in the NBA, but it would have been way more competitive, and I think the Miami Heat would have had a chance because playoff Jimmy is a real thing. You saw playoff Jimmy come out in that playing game against the Sixers, and you saw him get hurt at halftime when he went up for that shot at the buzzer, and Kelly Oubre took out Jimmy Butler, messed up his MCL. He still played and finished the game, but he wasn't the same. And you saw what he was doing in that first half. He was super engaged, and he was like, "It's playoff time. It's ready. It's time for me to go." Balls to the wall. He had 13 points, like 6 rebounds, 6 assists, like 4 steals in that first half before getting hurt. Like he looked really active, really engaged, really dominant. And so I think he would have brought that against the Boston Celtics. I'm not saying the Miami Heat would have beat Boston for sure if we were fully healthy, but we would have had a way better chance and would have been 4-1 if we had Jimmy and Terry Rozier. So I agree with some things that Bill Simmons says, but I don't agree with everything. I think the Boston Celtics should be scared because they do look really good this season, but they're beatable. They're not a juggernaut, and I think they're going to be a great team this season again. And I think the Miami Heat, if healthy, you never know. As long as the Miami Heat avoid the play-in and can actually have an easier route in the playoffs, we could play the Boston Celtics again. And with Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, I trust Jimmy Butler over Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics. That's just my opinion. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you agree with everything that Bill Simmons says, or do you think everything he said is crazy? Let me know in the comments. And also, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.